In this lesson, I will be explaining the demand forecasting techniques. These techniques will enable the industrialist or a businessman to arrive at the future demand for the product. As in the earlier case where we estimated the current demand potential in the market survey techniques, here also we make a distinction between consumer products and the industrial products. In the case of consumer products, the linear models which are used for forecasting the demand are different from the linear models which are used for forecasting the industrial product demand. In the case of consumer products, there are two things. One is the demand forecasting can be done by taking only one influential factor. The other thing where you can take several factors which influence the consumer product demand and then you do the forecasting. To be in a very precise manner, we estimate the demand for the product in future by taking the simplest model where we take the most influential factor which influences the consumer product demand. Similarly, in the case of industrial product demand also, we take the most influential factor which influences the demand for the product and we forecast the demand. The linear model which is used for forecasting the demand for consumer product is given by linear demand forecasting model for consumer products. Mind you, it is a single equation two variable model is given by dt is equal to alpha plus beta xt plus ut, where dt is the demand for consumer product at time t, xt is the most influencing factor for the consumer product. Now, any of these may be influencing factors, namely income or price or population, whichever is most influential, we use that as xt. Now, alpha and beta are the parameters of the linear model. ut is the error term which takes care of all the factors other than xt which influence the demand for the consumer product in question. The parameters alpha and beta are estimated by the OLS technique. Under this, the normal equations are sigma dt is equal to alpha plus beta, in fact it is n alpha plus beta into sigma xt. This is the first normal equation. The second normal equation is sigma xt dt is equal to alpha sigma xt plus beta sigma xt square. That is the second normal equation. Now, solving the two simultaneous equations, we get alpha, estimated value of alpha as dt bar minus beta hat into xt bar, that is the value of alpha hat, that is the first estimator. So, this I call as equation 3. Now, what is dt bar? dt bar is, I can say where dt bar is sigma di, I going from 1 to n divided by n. This is dt bar. Similarly, xt bar is sigma x ti divided by, in fact it is dti by n, I going from 1 to n. Now, the value of beta hat is given by sigma dt xt by sigma xt square, where small dt is nothing but dt minus dt bar and small xt is nothing but capital XT minus XT bar. So, the first step is using the past data, we estimate the values for dt bar and xt bar, and after estimating the values for dt bar and xt bar, we substitute in these two equations and get the values for alpha and beta. Therefore, the estimated model for demand forecasting mind you, this is for consumer products. Is given by dt cap or dt hat is equal to alpha hat plus beta hat xt. Now, after having estimated this linear model using the OLS technique as I have described above, we take various scenarios for xt, future values. Depending on the situation where you are in. Supposing you are in a very bright situation as far as the economy is concerned, we can say that xt is increasing every year, or if the economy is not improving and it is in a downward shape, we can say xt is going down, that is as far as the per capita income is concerned. Whereas if it is price, maybe you can always think of a scenario like the price is increasing in the beginning and then going down later on. In the same manner, the price is decreasing in the beginning and increasing later on. So, some of these scenarios can be used for various values for xt, and depending on the various scenarios of xt, we can generate the demand dt hat, that is the demand forecast for the consumer product for the next 10 years to come. Mind you, this procedure of obtaining the demand forecast using the linear model for consumer products is valid only for the existing products, where the past data for 10 years is available on dt and xt, the demand for the product as well as the most influencing factor, which is xt. Now, in case it is a new product where there is no past demand available, we cannot use the linear model. We use the two techniques which are either the Delphi technique or the market survey technique. The second one I have already explained in the previous lesson. In the first one, that is the Delphi technique, what we do is we identify a subject expert or the product expert as they call it, and we identify a series of experts, maybe about 4 or 5, and call for a meeting, prepare a questionnaire for them, and then give the questionnaire to these experts and ask them what they feel the demand for the product will be around in the next 4 to 5 years. Now, the questionnaires are called back and analyzed. If there is a variance in the estimate of demand given by various experts, again the questionnaire is prepared and circulated among the experts, and this procedure goes on until you get a unified expert opinion as far as the product demand for future is concerned. So, this is the best way of obtaining the demand for future for those products where there is no past data available. That is, they are not the existing products, they are brand new products which have come into the market. The other one is the market survey technique, which I explained in the previous lesson, where you prepare the questionnaire, go to the end users, collect the information as to the demand and also their likely demand in future, and then estimate the future demand. That is how it is done. Now, these techniques are subjective in nature, both Delphi as well as market survey technique, because when you identify experts in the field, it is possible that you are not identifying all the experts which are there in the field or which are there for the product. That is one. Second thing is, you do not have time to call for an expert meeting. So, therefore, you are just happy calling 1 or 2 experts and then call them for the meeting and estimate the demand. That is second. The third is, the estimate given by these experts, all said and done, may be subjective in nature, because one expert meeting may arrive at one estimate, whereas a second round of experts may arrive at a second estimate. The better procedure to estimate the future demand for a new product, where there is no past data and where we cannot use the linear models which I explained above, is the market survey technique. That is more reliable than using the Delphi technique. You identify the end users, prepare the questionnaire, you incorporate a question where you ask them what is your likely demand for future you feel will be maybe in about a year or so, or what is your likely requirement in future. Maybe he will be able to tell you about 6 months from now or 1 year from now. So, I think that is more reliable than using the Delphi technique, but all said and done, both these techniques are subjective in nature. Now, if the consumer product which has been identified as a new product, but at the same time it is similar to a product which was already existing, we can always make use of that similar product past data and use the linear models and get a more reliable estimate than these two techniques will give, because after all these two techniques are very subjective in nature. Therefore, what I conclude is, as far as consumer products, of course, it is the same true with the industrial products also. I will be telling you in a short while from now. Now, in the case of consumer products, if you want to have a more precise demand forecast for the product, you should use the linear models, which I described them above. Now, let us come to the industrial product. In the case of industrial product also, we have to identify the factors which influence the industrial product demand. Yeah, in the case of industrial products, the linear model for forecasting the demand for industrial products is given by dt dash is equal to a plus b xt dash plus ut dash, where dt dash is the demand at time t and xt dash is again the most influencing factor. For demand. This xt prime can take the shape of production of the end user industry. This is the most influencing factor, production of the end user industry. In most of the cases, the production of the end user industry is the most influencing factor which influences the demand for an industrial product. So, xt prime in most of the cases takes this shape of the production of the end user industry. The production of the end user industry can be obtained by taking the CMIE publications. Now again as before, A and B are the parameters, and ut dash or ut prime as they say is the error term for the which takes care of all the factors which have not been taken care of in xt prime as in the case of consumer product. Now again we make use of the ordinary least square technique. Again we make use of the ordinary least square technique to estimate the values for A and B. The normal equations are, first one is again dt prime is equal to NA plus B sigma xt prime. Mind you, prime is very important because you have to distinguish between the dt earlier in the consumer product and the dt here. Same thing with xt earlier and xt here. So this is the industrial product, that is what we are doing now. So the sigma runs from 1 to n, then this sigma also runs from 1 to n. The second normal equation is again xt prime dt prime, again i's will be there definitely, I going from 1 to n is equal to A sigma xt prime, I going from 1 to n, plus B sigma xt I prime square. So these are the two normal equations, I call them equation 1 and equation 2, which will enable the estimation of A and B. We have to solve these two simultaneous equations and estimate the values of A and B. So finally we will get an estimate like this, A cap or A hat as they call it is equal to D prime bar minus B hat x t prime bar. This is what, again similarly as in the case of consumer products, dt prime bar is the mean of all the values of dt, I going from 1 to n divided by n, and xt prime bar is equal to sigma I going from 1 to n xti prime divided by n. So this is the value of A hat. Now the value of B hat will be given by sigma dt small dt prime small xt prime divided by sigma xt prime square. These are all small letters mind you, and the small letters convey, what do they convey? As in the case of consumer products, it is dt prime minus dt prime bar. The second one small xt prime is xt prime minus xt prime bar. So one should be careful about this notations, the small letters and the capital letters. So once you estimate the values for A and B, we will get the estimated model as before, as in the case of consumer products, dt prime cap or hat is equal to A hat plus B hat xt prime. Now again you use the scenarios for xt prime. Now in this case the scenario is with respect to the production of the end user industry. Which is xt prime. Now these various scenarios of production of end user industry can be obtained from either the publications or from the end user himself. The end user himself will give you an idea as to what production level he is going to expand in the next 4 or 5 years, or in the next 5 to 10 years also for that matter, and based on those production projections which are given by the end user, we project the demand, that is dt prime, accordingly. Now, in the case of existing products, these models are very useful. Again, in the case, as in the case of consumer product, in industrial products also, when it is a brand new product, we have to again use the same techniques, that is the Delphi technique and the market survey technique. If it is a brand new product where there is no past data available, or the market survey technique. These are the two techniques which are available for brand new products. Mind you, when you are using the market survey technique, as I have detailed in the previous lesson, the market survey technique, when you are estimating the future demand, the questionnaire to be used is entirely different from the questionnaire that you use for the consumer products. So, if you use the correct questionnaire and you incorporate a question where you ask the end user as to what your likely demand for the product for the next 5 to 10 years, if you incorporate that question in the questionnaire, you will be able to estimate the market survey technique demand forecast for the consumer industrial product. I mean, this is more reliable than again the Delphi technique, which is more subjective, where you identify the experts and call for their opinion, prepare the questionnaire, circulate the questionnaire, and you keep on circulating the questionnaire until you arrive at a consensus estimate. This can be used if you are not able to spare time for market survey, then Delphi technique is the only other way where you can estimate the demand for a brand new product which is not existing in the market. Because the product is not existing in the market, we cannot use the linear model. The data that is required for the linear model cannot be obtained from the publications, because it is not available in the market. Now, once again, as in the case of consumer products, if this industrial product, which is a new one, but it is similar to an existing product, then we can use that similar data and use the linear model for forecasting the demand for industrial products also. In both case of consumer as well as industrial products, the sources of data that are available for getting the past data to fit the linear model to forecast the demand are the secondary sources of data are the CMIE publication, which gives the most reliable past data, as well as the CSO publications. This is as far as the all India estimate of demand is concerned. If you want a state-wise estimate for demand for future, then you can use the data obtained from the Bureau of Economics and Statistics of the respective state, where whichever state for which you are estimating the future demand. Now, these are the three main publications from where you should get the past data in order to get a reliable demand forecast, both for consumer as well as industrial product. Now, apart from this, there may be some what are called the product journals. Which may give the reliable data which can be used for forecasting the demand using the linear models, both in the case of the consumer as well as industrial products. This again is valid only when it is an existing product. If it is a brand new product, the secondary sources of data may not be able to give the past data that we are looking for in order to use that linear models for forecasting the demand. Again, as I said before, if it is a similar product, then these publications may help you to get a past data of a similar product. How far the product is similar, one has to examine. If the product is too much similar, the data which was obtained from any of these publications can be used for fitting the linear models which I have described above. Now, the most reliable demand forecasts can be obtained only through the linear models which I have described above. The other methods of forecasting the demand are more subjective in nature, as I explained above also. The best way is to look for the past data, either it is through the publications, secondary sources, or the company data itself. Company itself may give the past data. So, in which case you can use the company data itself and forecast the demand for the respective product. Again, the forecasts, mind you, may be either it is a statewide forecast, or it may be a nationwide forecast, or it may even be a district wide forecast, as in the case of market survey lesson which I described earlier. So, if we want the demand forecast to be reliable for both existing as well as for the new products, these techniques which I have described above should be made use of in order that we get a reliable demand forecast for future. Now, when we are making use of the linear models, we have to ensure that we use the two statistic, that is the T statistic for the XT variable which I have taken in the consumer product, and the T statistic for the XT prime variable which is used for the industrial product, and test whether there is they are significant or not. Once you identify a proper XT and XT prime, there is no reason why the significance, the statistical significance will not be there. And once you get a significant statistical estimate for using this student's T, all this you must have learnt in your statistics lessons, and you estimate the R square for the linear models, both the linear models, both for consumer as well as industrial products.